The gunshot echo faded into the vast emptiness of the prairie, as Olivia Thorne stared at the empty strongbox where her life savings had been just hours earlier. Dust swirled around her boots, mingling with the tears that dropped silently onto the weathered floorboards of her modest homestead. The year was 1875, and the man who called himself Dr. Elijah Blackstone had vanished with everything she owned. Olivia brushed a strand of auburn hair from her face, her fingers trembling with both rage and despair. At 26, she'd spent 4 years building a life for herself after her husband died in a mining accident. Every penny of those $300 had been earned through back-breaking work at her small dressmaking business in Pendleton, Oregon. "That no-good snake oil peddler," she whispered, her voice hardening as she traced the empty velvet lining of the box. Miracle elixir indeed. The memory of his smooth talk still rang in her ears. Blackstone had rolled into town 3 days prior with his gaudy wagon painted with promises of cures for everything from rheumatism to consumption. His silver tongue had convinced half the town to part with their money, but he'd saved his most persuasive pitch for Olivia. "Just think, Mrs. Thorne," he'd said, his dark eyes sparkling with false sincerity, "this investment will triple your money in a month. You'll own the finest dress shop in 3 counties. She'd believed him, allowed him to escort her home to retrieve her savings, and then accepted a cup of tea he insisted on making to celebrate their partnership. When she awoke hours later, both Blackstone and her money were gone. A knock at the door startled her from her bitter reverie. "Mrs. Thorne," Sheriff Wilson's gruff voice called out. "May I come in?" She hastily wiped her eyes. "Yes, Sheriff." The aging lawman removed his hat as he entered, his weathered face creased with concern. "I've got 5 other folks reporting the same thing, that Blackstone fella cleaned them out too." "Are you going after him?" Olivia asked, hope briefly flickering. Sheriff Wilson sighed, twisting his hat in his hands. "Mrs. Thorne, I'd like nothing more, but I've got no deputy and I can't leave Pendleton unprotected. I've sent telegrams to neighboring towns, but—" He trailed off, the futility of the situation hanging in the air between them. Olivia straightened her shoulders. "So that's it. He just gets away with it." "I'm sorry, madam. Truly I am." After the sheriff left, Olivia sat alone at her kitchen table until the last light of day faded. Without her savings, she couldn't purchase new fabric for the dresses she'd been commissioned to make. Without completing those commissions, she'd have no income. Without income, she'd lose her home. The spiral of disaster seemed inescapable. A sound from outside drew her attention, the rhythmic creak of wagon wheels and the soft nickering of horses. Visitors were rare this time of evening, especially at her isolated homestead, a mile from town proper. Cautiously, she reached for the shotgun her husband had taught her to use, positioning herself beside the window. A wagon had indeed pulled up, but it wasn't the flashy contraption Blackstone had driven. This was a simple supply wagon, weathered from long journeys. A tall figure stepped down, his silhouette unmistakably masculine against the twilight sky. He moved with the easy grace of someone accustomed to the saddle, though he'd arrived by wagon. "Hello, the house," a deep voice called. "Mrs. Thorne? Olivia Thorne, who's asking?" She replied, keeping the shotgun ready but out of sight. The man stepped closer, and moonlight revealed features that might have been handsome if not for the thin scar that ran from his right temple to his jawline. He wore simple trail clothes, a dusty denim shirt, worn leather vest, and a wide-brimmed hat that had seen better days. "Name's Ryker Landon, madam. I heard in town you had some trouble with a certain doctor." Olivia's fingers tightened on the shotgun. "If you're his partner coming back for more, you should know I've got nothing left to take." A low chuckle rumbled from the man. "No, madam, I'm not his partner. Quite the opposite." He shifted, and she noticed he wore a gun belt with practiced ease. "May I come closer to explain?" "It's a long story, and I've been tracking that snake for 300 miles. Something in his steady gaze convinced her. "You can come to the porch. That's as far as my hospitality extends to strangers these days." Ryker nodded and approached slowly, his spurs jingling softly with each step. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 35, with eyes the color of a summer storm and lines that spoke of years squinting against harsh sun. "Mrs. Thorne, I've been hunting Elijah Blackstone for almost 2 years," he said, settling his lean frame against the porch rail. "His real name is Marcus Devereaux. He's wanted in 4 states for fraud, theft, and worse." "Worse?" Olivia asked, her grip on the shotgun relaxing slightly. "In Kansas, he sold medicine that was mostly laudanum to a pregnant woman. She and her baby died." His voice hardened. "In Colorado, he swindled a mining town, and when the foreman confronted him, Devereaux shot him dead." "And what's your interest in this, Mr. Landon? Are you a lawman?" Ryker removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. "Was Texas Ranger, not anymore." Something passed across his face, a shadow of old pain. "Now I'm just a man settling a debt." "What kind of debt?" "The kind you can never fully repay." His eyes met hers, unflinching. "Devereaux took someone from me too, someone I couldn't get back." Understanding passed between them, bridging the gap of strangers. "What are you proposing, Mr. Landon?" "I know which way he's headed. I've been 1 step behind him since boys." He replaced his hat, adjusting it with practiced precision. "I aim to catch him, retrieve what he's stolen, and see him face justice, your money included." "And why would you do that for me? For any of us?" A hint of a smile touched his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe I'm just tired of seeing him walk away. Maybe I believe folks deserve better than to have their dreams stolen by silver-tongued devils." Olivia considered him carefully. There was something in his manner that spoke of determination, of a man who would not easily be deterred from his path. Yet she'd already trusted too easily once. "How do I know you won't just take what information I have and disappear like he did?" Ryker reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a folded paper. He handed it to her, a wanted poster with Blackstone's face, albeit with different hair and no beard, offering a $500 reward. "I don't need your money, Mrs. Thorne. I need information, anything you remember about what he said, where he might be headed. Each person he swindles leaves another breadcrumb." Olivia set the shotgun aside finally. "He mentioned something about the Columbia River. Said he had business interests there." Ryker nodded. "That fits. He's been working his way northwest." He straightened from the rail. "I'll be leaving at first light. If I catch him, I'll return with what's yours." "Wait," Olivia said suddenly. "Take me with you." "Madam." "Take me with you," she repeated more firmly. "That money is everything I have in this world. I won't sit here helplessly waiting to see if a stranger keeps his word. It's dangerous trail, Mrs. Thorne, not a journey for a woman," she finished, her green eyes flashing. "Mr. Landon, I crossed half this country in a wagon train after burying my parents on the trail. I spent 2 years in a mining camp where I was one of 3 women among 50 men. I can ride, shoot, and I won't slow you down." Ryker studied her for a long moment, and she met his gaze unflinchingly. Finally, he nodded once. "Pack light. Bedroll 1 change of clothes. Bring that shotgun and whatever shells you have. We leave at dawn." He turned to go, then paused. "And Mrs. Thorne, this isn't a mission for vengeance. It's for justice. There's a difference." "I understand the difference very well, Mr. Landon," she replied quietly. "Better than most." As he walked back to his wagon, Olivia felt something stir within her that had been dormant for too long. Purpose. Tomorrow, she would begin the journey to reclaim what was hers. Little did she know that she would find far more than her stolen savings along the way. Dawn painted the eastern sky with streaks of pink and gold as Olivia secured the last of her belongings to the wagon. She'd slept little, her mind racing with the unexpected turn her life had taken. Ryker had arrived precisely when he said he would, saying nothing as he helped load her modest traveling gear. "I left a note with my neighbor," she said as she climbed onto the wagon seat beside him. "In case anyone comes looking for me." Ryker nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon as he flicked the reins. The horses moved forward, and Olivia felt a pang as her small home receded in the distance. "How do you know which way he's gone?" she asked after they'd been traveling for an hour, the silence between them comfortable but heavy with purpose. "Blackstone or Devereaux is a creature of habit," Ryker explained, his voice rumbling low beneath the wagon's creak. "He moves between larger settlements, never returning to the same place within 2 years. He targets towns that are prosperous enough to have money but small enough that law enforcement is limited. You've studied him closely." A muscle in his jaw tightened. "When you hunt something for 2 years, you learn its patterns." "And what did he take from you, Mr. Landon?" Olivia asked quietly. "If you don't mind my asking." For several moments she thought he wouldn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the trail ahead, his hands steady on the reins. "My sister," he finally said. "Caroline. She was 19, teaching in a small school in East Texas. Devereaux came through selling medicine that would cure her chronic cough." His knuckles whitened slightly. "It was mostly alcohol and morphine. She became addicted, lost her position, followed him when he left town. By the time I found her 6 months later, she was—" He paused. "She died in my arms in a Denver boarding house." Olivia's heart constricted. "I'm so sorry." "Texas Rangers couldn't pursue him across state lines. So I turned in my badge and went after him myself." He glanced at her briefly. "Been on his trail ever since." They traveled steadily northward all day, stopping only to rest the horses and eat a simple meal of jerky and hardtack. Ryker was efficient in his movements, wasting no energy on unnecessary tasks. Olivia found herself studying him when he wasn't looking the way the sun had weathered his skin. How his hands moved with quiet confidence, whether handling the reins or checking his Winchester repeater. As evening approached, they made camp beneath a stand of cottonwoods near a small stream. Ryker unhitched the horses with practiced ease while Olivia gathered wood for a fire. "You've done this before," he observed as she efficiently arranged the kindling. "Like I said, 2 years in a mining camp teaches a woman many things." She struck a match and coaxed the small flame to life. "My husband Thomas taught me the rest. He believed a woman should be able to fend for herself if needed." "Sounds like a sensible man." He was. Olivia's voice softened with memory. "A cave-in took him 3 years ago. He was trying to help another miner escape." Ryker nodded solemnly. "A good way to measure a man what he'll do when others are in danger." They shared a simple supper of beans and coffee. As night settled fully around them, Ryker spread his bedroll on one side of the fire, Olivia on the other. The night sounds of the wilderness coyotes calling in the distance, the rustle of night creatures in the underbrush filled the silence between them. "How much did he take from you?" Ryker asked suddenly. $300, every cent I had," he whistled low. "That's more than his usual haul from one person." "He convinced me to invest in his medical company, said I'd be a partner," she laughed bitterly. "I was a fool." "No," Ryker said firmly. "You were trusting." "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Seems like the same weakness to me." Ryker propped himself up on one elbow, his face half illuminated by the dying fire. "Trust isn't weakness, Mrs. Thorne, it's courage, especially after loss." Something in his words touched a chord deep within her, but before she could respond, he continued, "Get some sleep. We've got a hard ride tomorrow. I want to reach the Dalles by nightfall. That's where our snake will be shedding his skin." "What do you mean?" Devereaux changes his appearance after each big swindle. The Dalles has 3 barber shops and an outfitter where he can transform himself. If we're lucky, we'll catch him before he becomes someone new. Olivia nodded, settling into her bedroll. Sleep came surprisingly easily, despite the hard ground and unfamiliar surroundings. Perhaps it was the purpose driving her forward, or perhaps it was the strange comfort of knowing Ryker Landon was keeping watch. The next morning brought misty rain that soaked through their clothes and turned the trail muddy. They traveled in relative silence, both lost in their own thoughts as the landscape gradually changed around them. The open prairie gave way to more varied terrain, rolling hills dotted with pine and fir trees, the distant smudge of mountains on the horizon. By midday, the rain had stopped, and the sun emerged to steam the moisture from the earth. They paused to rest the horses near a grassy meadow spotted with wildflowers. "May I ask you something, Mr. Landon?" Olivia said as they stretched their legs. "You can ask. Might not answer." But there was the faintest hint of humor in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. "Why did you stop in Pendleton? Surely there are faster ways to pursue Devereaux than collecting every one of his victims along the way." Ryker's expression grew thoughtful. "Patterns, Mrs. Thorne. Each person he swindles tells me something more about where he's headed, what name he's using, how much money he's gathered. The more I know, the closer I get. And how close are you now? Closer than I've been in months." "He's carrying more money than usual, which means he'll be looking to disappear for a while. The Columbia River gives him access to Portland, Seattle, even ships to San Francisco or beyond." Olivia felt a chill despite the warming sun. "You think he's planning to leave the country? It's possible. Which is why we need to reach the Dalles by tonight." They pushed the horses harder that afternoon, the wagon bouncing over the increasingly rough terrain as they followed the trail alongside the Columbia River. The mighty waterway gleamed silver in the afternoon sun, its power evident in the rushing current. As the sun began its western descent, the first buildings of the Dalles came into view, a busy river port where steamboats docked alongside warehouses and trading posts. The town hummed with the energy of commerce and transportation, a vital link between the eastern and western parts of Oregon. Ryker guided the wagon to a modest hotel on a side street, away from the main hustle of the waterfront. "We'll get rooms here," he said quietly. "Change into clean clothes. Then we hunt." "How will we find him in all this?" Olivia gestured to the busy streets, where traders, travelers, and locals mingled in the early evening light. "We'll start at the barber shops, then check the hotels, the nice ones first. Devereaux enjoys his comforts." Ryker's eyes scanned the streets with the practiced vigilance of a man used to tracking prey. "He won't have changed his appearance yet. Too many people would remember a man with his distinctive features arriving today." They secured adjoining rooms at the hotel, a propriety that Olivia appreciated despite the unusual circumstances of their partnership. She washed away the dust of travel and changed into her one clean dress, a simple blue calico that had seen better days but was still presentable. When she emerged from her room, she found Ryker waiting in the hallway. He too had cleaned up, his dark hair still damp from washing, his trail clothes exchanged for a clean shirt, and vest that transformed him from rugged traveler to respectable gentleman, despite the ever-present gun belt at his hip. "You clean up well, Mr. Landon," she observed before she could stop herself. A hint of a smile crossed his face. "As do you, Mrs. Thorne." They set out into the busy streets as evening settled over the town. Lanterns were being lit along the main thoroughfare, and the saloons were beginning to fill with men looking for entertainment after a day's work. The first two barbershops yielded nothing. No one matching Devereaux's description had come in that day. At the third, however, a young apprentice recalled a well-dressed gentleman with a neatly trimmed dark beard who'd paid extra for a clean shave and haircut that very afternoon. Said he was meeting important business partners, the young man told them. Wanted to look his best. Did he say where he was staying? Ryker asked, pressing a coin into the apprentice's palm. Mentioned the Riverview Hotel, sir. Said it was the only place in town fit for a gentleman of his standing. Outside, Ryker's pace quickened. The Riverview is the most expensive hotel in the Dalles. If he's there, he's planning something big. The Riverview Hotel stood 3 stories tall near the waterfront, its windows glowing with the warm light of oil lamps. A pair of gleaming gaslights illuminated the entrance, where a doorman in a smart uniform greeted guests. Ryker paused across the street studying the building. "Wait here," he told Olivia. "I most certainly will not," she replied firmly. "My money is in there and I intend to be present when it's recovered." Ryker looked as though he might argue, then sighed. "Stay beside me, follow my lead. And if there's trouble, I know how to use that shotgun you made me leave at the hotel," she reminded him. "But I also know when discretion is the wiser course." They crossed the street together, Ryker adjusting his pace to match hers. At the hotel entrance, he straightened his vest and offered Olivia his arm in a gesture that would make them appear to be any respectable couple arriving for dinner. The lobby was elegantly appointed with velvet furniture and polished brass fixtures. A chandelier cast dancing light across the marble floor, and the soft strains of piano music drifted from the adjacent dining room. Ryker approached the front desk with easy confidence. "Good evening. My wife and I were hoping to join Dr. Elijah Blackstone for dinner. Has he arrived yet?" The clerk, a thin man with spectacles perched on his nose, consulted his register. "I don't believe we have a guest by that name, sir." "Ah, perhaps he's registered under his company name," Ryker said smoothly. "Tall gentleman, newly clean-shaven, speaks with a slight southern accent." Recognition flickered in the clerk's eyes. "You must mean Mr. Harrington. Yes, he checked in this afternoon. I believe he's dining now in the private room off the main restaurant." "Wonderful," Ryker smiled, though Olivia noticed how it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll just join him there. No need to announce us, we'd like to surprise our old friend." As they moved toward the dining room, Ryker's hand came to rest at the small of Olivia's back, a gesture both protective and guiding. The warmth of his palm through her dress was unexpectedly distracting. "Harrington," he murmured close to her ear. "New name, but same snake." The main dining room was half filled with well-dressed patrons enjoying elaborate meals by lamplight. A discreet inquiry to the headwaiter directed them to a partially closed door at the far end of the room. Ryker paused just outside, his expression hardening into the focused intensity of a predator about to strike. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Before Olivia could respond, he pushed the door open. The private dining room was intimate, with a single table set for 2. And there, raising a glass of wine to his lips, sat the man who had stolen everything from her. Elijah Blackstone, now clean-shaven and with his hair cropped shorter, looked up in mild annoyance at the interruption. When recognition dawned in his eyes, the wine glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the fine china plate below. "Hello, Devereaux," Ryker said quietly, stepping fully into the room. "It's been a long time." Devereaux's face drained of color. "Landon," he breathed, his eyes darting to the door behind them. "How unexpected." "Not for me," Ryker replied. I've been following your trail of victims across 3 states. You're getting sloppy." Devereaux's shock was quickly replaced by a calculating smile. "Come now, Landon. Surely we can discuss this like gentlemen. Whatever grievance you think you have, it's not his grievance you should be worried about," Olivia said, stepping out from behind Ryker. "It's mine." If Devereaux had been startled by Ryker's appearance, he was truly shocked to see Olivia. His mouth opened and closed wordlessly for a moment before he regained his composure. "Mrs. Thorne," he managed finally, "this is unexpected. I was just about to send a messenger to you in Pendleton. There was a temporary delay in our business arrangement, but I assure you, save your lies." Olivia cut him off. "I want my money back, all of it." Devereaux's eyes narrowed, the charming facade slipping. "Your money? My dear lady, you invested in a business venture. Sometimes investments don't pay off. Drugging someone and stealing their life savings isn't a business venture," Ryker said coldly. His hand hovered near his sidearm. "It's theft, and in some cases murder." A new voice spoke from the doorway behind them. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Harrington?" Olivia turned to see a beautiful woman in an elegant green dress standing in the doorway, her blonde hair elaborately styled, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. "Charlotte, my dear," Devereaux said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding with former business associates. Perhaps you could wait for me in the lobby." The woman's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Former business associates at this hour, without an appointment?" Her gaze shifted between Ryker and Olivia, then back to Devereaux. "What's really happening here, Marcus?" "Marcus," Olivia repeated. "So that is your real name?" The woman in green took a step into the room, her expression hardening. "Who are these people, and why did she call you by a different name?" Devereaux's charming smile had vanished completely now, replaced by cold calculation. "It's nothing for you to worry about, Charlotte. Just some people confused about he's a con man," Ryker interrupted. "He's wanted in multiple states for fraud, theft, and murder. His real name is Marcus Devereaux, and he's been traveling under different names for years, swindling people out of their money and leaving ruin in his wake." Charlotte's face paled. "Is this true?" "Of course not," Devereaux snapped, but his eyes betrayed him. "He stole my entire life savings 3 days ago," Olivia said, addressing Charlotte directly. $300. He drugged my tea and disappeared while I was unconscious." Something shifted in Charlotte's expression: recognition, then dawning horror. Slowly, she reached up to touch the diamonds at her throat. "These aren't real, are they?" she whispered. Devereaux's silence was answer enough. "How much did he take from you?" Ryker asked Charlotte gently. She swallowed hard. $5,000. My inheritance from my father. We were to be married tomorrow, then take the steamship to Portland." Olivia felt a surge of sympathy for the woman, whose devastation was written plainly across her beautiful features. Devereaux suddenly lunged toward a side door, but Ryker was faster. In one fluid motion, he drew his revolver and stepped into Devereaux's path. "Sit down," he ordered, his voice deadly quiet. For a tense moment, it seemed Devereaux might try something foolish. Then, with a defeated slump to his shoulders, he returned to his chair. "Where's the money, Devereaux?" Ryker demanded. "What money?" Devereaux attempted innocence one last time. Charlotte strode forward suddenly, her shock transforming to fury. She reached into the inner pocket of Devereaux's fine jacket and withdrew a leather wallet. "Is it in here with the steamship tickets you purchased this afternoon?" She opened the wallet and gasped. Inside were several thick stacks of bills. "That's mine," Devereaux protested weakly. Charlotte ignored him, counting quickly. "There's nearly $6,000 here." She looked up at Ryker and Olivia. "How many others did he steal from?" "At least 5 other people in Pendleton," Olivia said, Possibly more. Ryker kept his revolver trained on Devereaux. We need to find the sheriff. I'll go, Charlotte volunteered, still clutching the wallet. I saw the sheriff's office when I arrived this morning. After she left, an uncomfortable silence filled the private dining room. Devereaux stared at the tablecloth, all pretense of charm abandoned. Why? Olivia finally asked. Why do this to people who never harmed you? Devereaux looked up, a strange smile playing at his lips. Because it's easy, Mrs. Thorne. Because people want to believe in miracles and quick fortunes. I simply provide the illusion they crave. You provided death to my sister, Ryker said coldly. Something like genuine regret flickered across Devereaux's face. The girl in Texas. I never intended. Save it. Ryker cut him off. You'll have plenty of time to contemplate your intentions in prison. It took less than 15 minutes for Charlotte to return with the sheriff and a deputy. The lawman, a broad-shouldered man with a salt and pepper mustache, listened to their stories with growing outrage. Marcus Devereaux, he said, studying the wanted poster Ryker provided. You've led quite a chase across the territories. It ends here. As the deputy handcuffed Devereaux, the sheriff turned to Charlotte. The money, miss. She hesitated, then handed over the wallet. There needs to be at least $300 for Mrs. Thorne, she said firmly, and the others from Pendleton. The sheriff nodded. We'll sort it all out at my office. If you'll all come with me. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of statements and paperwork. The sheriff sent telegrams to Pendleton and other jurisdictions where Devereaux was wanted. Charlotte, still wearing her diamonds that turned out to be paste, sat quietly in a corner, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Finally, with Devereaux secured in a cell, the sheriff returned to his desk with the wallet. According to my count, there's $5,843 here. Mrs. Thorne, your $300 is accounted for. Miss Winters, your claim of $5,000 is the largest, but there are the other victims in Pendleton to consider. I don't need it all, Charlotte said suddenly. Just enough to get home to my sister in Portland. Olivia felt a surge of admiration for the woman's dignity in the face of such betrayal. The sheriff nodded. I propose this. Mrs. Thorne takes her $300. Miss Winters takes $1,000, enough to settle her affairs and travel comfortably. The remaining funds will be held for the other victims, with any leftover applied to Devereaux as prosecution. They all agreed to the arrangement. As the sheriff counted out her money, Olivia felt a strange mixture of relief and hollowness. Justice had been swift, but it didn't erase the violation of trust she'd experienced. Outside the sheriff's office, the night had grown cool, stars pricking the dark canopy above. Charlotte departed with a quiet dignity, declining Ryker's offer to escort her to her hotel. What will you do now? Olivia asked Ryker as they walked back toward their own lodgings. He was silent for several steps. I've been chasing Devereaux for so long, I hardly know what comes next. He glanced at her. And you? Will you return to Pendleton tomorrow? The question hung between them, weighted with unspoken possibilities. Olivia realized with some surprise that she wasn't eager to return to her solitary existence. I suppose I should, she said slowly. My business could wait a few more days, Ryker finished unexpectedly. The Columbia River Gorge is beautiful this time of year, and after what you've been through, perhaps a moment to breathe wouldn't be amiss. Olivia studied his face in the moonlight, seeing something there she hadn't noticed before, a softness beneath the hardened exterior, a man emerging from behind the hunter's mask. Are you suggesting a holiday, Mr. Landon? The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. I'm suggesting we both deserve a moment of peace before deciding what comes next. And he hesitated. I find I'm not quite ready to bid you farewell, Mrs. Thorne. Her heart quickened at his words, at the quiet vulnerability in his admission. Then I accept your suggestion. A few days to see the gorge sounds. Restorative. They continued walking, their steps falling naturally in rhythm. The weight of the money in Olivia's reticule was a comfort, but it was Ryker's presence beside her that truly eased the lingering anxiety of the past days. "You should know," he said as they reached the hotel, "that once Devereaux is transported to face charges in other territories, I intend to return to Texas. I have land there, my family's ranch." Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the disappointment that bloomed in her chest. "Of course. You've completed your mission. Your sister can rest in peace now." Ryker stopped at the hotel entrance, turning to face her fully. "That's not what I meant, Olivia." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cool night air. "What did you mean?" she asked softly. "I meant that when I go back, I'll be starting a new chapter, building something instead of hunting." His gray eyes held hers steadily. "And I find myself wondering if, after we've had time to know each other better, you might consider being part of that chapter." Olivia's breath caught. "Mr. Landon, Ryker," he corrected gently. "Ryker," she amended, the name feeling right on her lips. "We've known each other barely 3 days." "Yes," he acknowledged. "And in those 3 days I've seen your courage, your determination, your resilience. I've admired all of it." He stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "I'm not proposing marriage, Olivia, not yet. I'm proposing possibility." Something warm unfurled in her chest, hope, perhaps, or the awakening of feelings she'd thought forever dormant after Thomas's death. "Possibility," she repeated. "I think I would like that very much." His smile then was genuine, reaching his eyes and transforming his face. Gently, he offered her his arm to escort her inside. "Then let's begin with tomorrow," he said. "The Columbia awaits." The next morning dawned clear and bright, the sky a vast blue canopy over the rushing waters of the Columbia River. Ryker had arranged for a local guide to take them upriver in a small boat to view the dramatic landscapes of the gorge. Olivia wore her blue dress again, having washed it the night before, and had tied a simple bonnet over her auburn hair to protect from the sun. When Ryker saw her in the hotel lobby, something in his expression made her cheeks warm. "You look lovely," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied, noticing how the morning light accentuated the silver at his temples. Without the constant vigilance of the hunt in his eyes, he appeared younger, more at ease. Their guide, an weathered old riverman named Jacob, took them several miles upriver, pointing out rock formations and telling tales of the native peoples who had fished these waters for centuries. The sheer cliffs of the gorge rose dramatically on either side, creating a cathedral of stone and water that left Olivia breathless. "It's magnificent," she said, trailing her fingers in the cool water as their boat drifted in a calm eddy. "I never imagined such grandeur existed." Ryker sat beside her, his shoulder occasionally brushing hers as the boat rocked gently. Texas has its own beauty-wide open spaces that make a person feel both insignificant and infinite at the same time. But this, he gestured to the towering cliffs, this is something special. They picnicked on a small, pebbly beach, sharing bread, cheese, and apples while Jacob told them stories of the river's moods and mysteries. As the afternoon progressed, Olivia found herself laughing more than she had in years, the tension of recent events gradually easing from her shoulders. Later, as Jacob guided the boat back downstream, Ryker's hand found hers on the wooden seat between them. His calloused fingers entwined with hers naturally, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. Neither of them spoke of it, but Olivia felt something fundamental shifting between them, a bridge forming over the separate currents of their lives. The next 3 days passed in a similar fashion, exploring the natural wonders surrounding the Dalles, sharing simple meals, and gradually revealing more of themselves to each other. Ryker told her of his childhood on the ranch in Texas, of his years as a ranger, of the dreams he'd set aside to pursue justice for his sister. Olivia shared stories of her journey west with her first husband, of building her dressmaking business from nothing, of the loneliness that had become her constant companion. On their final evening, they dined at a small restaurant overlooking the river. Sunset painted the water in shades of gold and crimson, reflecting the fiery sky above. "I've made a decision," Olivia said as they lingered over coffee. "I'm going to sell my house in Pendleton." Ryker looked up in surprise. "Oh, yes. It was never truly home, just a place I lived after Thomas died. The dressmaking business was merely survival." She took a deep breath. "I'd like to try something new. Such as, I thought perhaps I might visit Texas." She met his gaze steadily. "I hear it's beautiful this time of year." The slow smile that spread across Ryker's face made her heart flutter. "It is indeed, especially the hill country where my ranch is located. The wildflowers are something to behold. Would there be room there for a dressmaker? I imagine even Texas ranchers' wives need proper attire." "I imagine they do." He reached across the table to take her hand. "And I know for certain there's room for you, Olivia Thorne, if that's truly what you want." "It is," she said, surprised by her own certainty. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because in these few days I've found something with you that I thought was lost to me forever." "And what is that?" he asked softly. "Hope," she replied simply. "And the beginning of something that feels like love." Ryker's eyes darkened with emotion. He stood, still holding her hand, and drew her to her feet. Without words, he led her to the restaurant's small balcony overlooking the river. There, with the last light of day painting the world in golden hues, he cupped her face gently in his hands. "May I?" he whispered. Olivia nodded, and his lips met hers in a kiss that was both gentle and certain, the seal on a promise neither had expected to make when their paths crossed just days earlier. When they parted, Ryker kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I never thought I'd find you when I set out to catch a thief," he murmured. "Nor I you," she replied. "But perhaps some treasures are found only when we're searching for something else entirely." The journey back to Pendleton took 2 days, the landscape unfolding in reverse as they traveled the now familiar trail. They spoke of practical matters. Olivia would need several weeks to sell her house and business, while Ryker would make arrangements for their journey to Texas. Upon their return, Olivia found her small community buzzing with the news of Blackstone's capture. The sheriff greeted them warmly, confirming that all the swindled townspeople would be receiving their money back. "You did this town a service, Landon," Sheriff Wilson said, clapping Ryker on the shoulder. "And Mrs. Thorne, I'm glad to see you safely returned." The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Olivia found a buyer for her house more quickly than expected, a young doctor and his wife who had just arrived in town. Her dressmaking business was purchased by her apprentice, a talented young woman eager for the opportunity. Each evening, Ryker would come to her house for supper, their connection deepening with every conversation, every shared laugh, every gentle touch. Sometimes they spoke of the future, the ranch in Texas, the life they might build together. Other times, they simply enjoyed the present moment, marveling at the unexpected turn their lives had taken. On the night before their departure, Olivia stood in her empty house, the bare walls echoing with memories both painful and precious. Having second thoughts, Ryker asked quietly from the doorway. She turned to him, shaking her head. "No, just saying goodbye to a chapter of my life. He crossed the room to stand beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. Some chapters are meant to end so better ones can begin. Is that what awaits us in Texas? A better chapter? Ryker took both her hands in his. I believe so, but there's something I need to ask you first. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small ring, a simple gold band set with a modest pearl. This was my mother's. She made me promise I'd only give it to a woman of substance and character, someone who knew her own mind and heart. Olivia's breath caught as he knelt before her. Olivia Thorne, I know we've known each other only a short while, but some things in this life are certain from the start. My love for you is one of those things. His gray eyes held her steadily. Will you marry me? Not because you need someone, but because we've found in each other something worth building a life around. Tears blurred her vision as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Ryker Landon. I will marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms. Their kiss was a promise, a beginning, a declaration of trust in the future they would forge together. The following morning they left Pendleton as the sun crested the eastern hills. Their wagon was loaded with Olivia's remaining possessions, and the hopes of two people who had found each other in the most unexpected of circumstances. As they crested the hill overlooking the town, Olivia glanced back one last time. Then she turned her face toward the horizon, toward Texas, toward Ryker and the new life awaiting them both. Ready? He asked, his hand covering hers on the seat between them. Ready, she confirmed, the pearl on her finger catching the morning light. 6 months later, wildflowers carpeted the rolling hills of the Landon Ranch in a riot of bluebonnets, Indian paintbrush, and buttercups. The ranch house, once a bachelor's sparse dwelling, had been transformed under Olivia's care into a true home, with curtains at the windows and a garden beginning to flourish beside the kitchen door. Olivia's dressmaking skills had quickly earned her a reputation among the neighboring ranch's families, providing her with both purpose and community in her new home. More importantly, she had found in Ryker a partner who valued her strength as much as her tenderness, who shared both burdens and joys with equal commitment. On a perfect spring evening, they sat together on the porch swing Ryker had built as a wedding gift, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in hues of pink and gold. His arm rested comfortably around her shoulders, her head nestled against his chest. Any regrets? He asked, a question he posed occasionally, always receiving the same answer. Not one, she replied, placing her hand over his heart. Though I sometimes wonder what would have happened if that snake oil salesman hadn't come to Pendleton. Ryker's hand covered hers. I'd have found you somehow, Olivia Landon. Some things are meant to be, regardless of the path. She smiled up at him, still marveling at how this man, once driven by vengeance, had transformed into her devoted husband. A man who approached their future with the same determination he'd once reserved for his hunt. I have something to tell you, she said, sitting up slightly to better see his face. Oh. His expression was curious, untroubled. Olivia took his hand and guided it to rest against her abdomen. Come December, there will be 3 of us on this porch. For a moment, Ryker stared at her in stunned silence. Then his face transformed with a joy so pure it brought tears to Olivia's eyes. A baby, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. We're having a baby. She nodded, laughing through her own happy tears as he gathered her carefully in his arms. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. For this gift, for everything. As the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the Texas sky, they held each other close, the future stretching before them like an untold story waiting to be written. From the most unlikely of beginnings, a theft, a pursuit, A chance meeting, they had forged something precious and enduring. The snake oil salesman had left her penniless, but in the end, Olivia had gained something far more valuable than the money Ryker had recovered. She had found love in the most unexpected place, proof that sometimes the greatest treasures come disguised as our greatest losses. And as Ryker's hand cradled the promise of their child, they both knew that their family, their love, their shared future was the true fortune neither had dared to hope for, but both had found.